Well, you can see the Green Ghost is out of the shop. It's going to be outside here for a while, kind of awaiting its next phase of inspection, and that's going to be a road test. So what I need to do is I either need to straighten out that front fender enough or replace it and then get a good headlight so I'm legal to drive this, because I really want to drive it, and I want to drive it hard to kind of make sure that the engine, suspension, transmission, and everything are okay. I don't want to have to deal with any of those items. If I'm going to just have to deal with the body work, that's enough, okay? So I finished the first 5 parts in this series called, Rescuing an Old Benz on this W211 300SD. And I'm going to give you a sneak peek now of parts 3, 4, and 5. And if you want to see the full versions of those videos, I'll put links in the show more of this video here. So as kind of a treat for my Kent's Garage watchers, I want you to get an opportunity to hear this engine run, okay? Now, some of you who don't like diesel engines, maybe don't like the sound of a diesel, this won't be music to your ears. But for you diesel lovers out here, and you can just enjoy the sound, I call it music to your ears, of a healthy running diesel engine. And I don't even have fresh fuel in the car, and I haven't rebuilt the injectors with Monarch nozzles. So imagine how much better it will run when I do those things. Okay, so before we really get it on the road and test it, we're also going to take it into the shop. I'm going to do some critical measuring of key points in the suspension, shock towers, and so on. And then I'm going to do the oil change, I'm going to do the transmission fluid change, I'm going to do the rear end fluid change, and the power steering fluid change, because all those fluids need to be changed. Oh yeah, and the brake fluid, of course. So that's coming on down the road. So don't expect part 6 in this series anytime soon. It could be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or whatever. Those of you who've been around these diesel engines will recognize this is the sound of a healthy engine. Look at the lack of vibration and shake. A little bit of shake in the air cleaner, but the air cleaner mounts are broken. Now the blow-by test I do is I check for cap dance. All I do is take the oil filler cap and completely loosen it up and let go of it. Look at that cap. It's hardly dancing at all. Now, if the cap is rattling and rolling, I've seen some of these where the cap literally blows right off the top of the engine. But this one is hardly moving. I think the condition of this engine also verifies the mileage at 120,000 miles. Now, it's as far as rust is concerned, this Green Ghost is turning out better than I thought. It's probably one of the cleanest 116s I've ever seen. Even 15 years ago, this car's pretty old. It is literally it is 36 years old. So it's pretty amazing to find one this rust-free. The only way you're going to be able to determine the extent of the rust on these old cars is to get underneath them. If you can't get them up on a lift, you're going to have to jack them up, you're going to have to get the wheels off, and you're going to really have to poke around at some key points. Now, I'm going to move the camera in close here now and kind of show you some of the key points I look at right away, determine whether or not the car has any evidence of rust. But other than those 2 areas, there's nothing. I mean, there's maybe a couple little places of surface rust, but this is really one nice rust-free W116. And as far as rust is concerned, this car's passed the test with flying colors. Let me explain some of the things you want to look for when you're trying to determine if the car's had any repaint on it at all. You can get really fooled, particularly if you're looking at a car in the rain, and so is the case with this 300SD. I did not notice this right here until I got this car home and got it up on the lift. That's why when you're checking for body damage and body repaint, I found it's better to get down on the ground and look up into the light. You can't imagine how many times I've got a car home here, I pulled a customer's car and put it up on the lift, and I see things that I've never seen outside. Because outside you're looking down with the light, here I'm looking up at the light, and sure enough, right here, I'm spotting little bubbles. Now those bubbles are indicative of auto body plastic behind the paint lifting away from the metal. So not only has there been some repair work done here, but it's very poor paint work. The other thing I look for is crazing or minor, very fine cracking in the paint. And I can show you that there. So we've got a situation here now where the hood has been repainted, and you saw that damage. The left front fender has been repainted, and it's been blended into the left front door. This has been repainted here, and it's been blended in right up here because I can see minor crazing. When I say crazing, it's like minor cracks. This is usually due to poor prep, poor surface preparation, poor sealing, and cheap paint, okay? But I see all these minor little cracks, and of course I can see it's just been blended out into this area. So that front end damage is not the only damage that this car has incurred during its life. So when you get one of these cars, it's real important you look at it over real closely. I'm not sure if this damage is going to have an impact on my decision, but it is going to impact the amount of work, because now I've either got to replace this door or I've got to grind out all this old bad bodywork that somebody did a number of years ago and redo this. That's just another, 10 hours of work, okay? So all these things start adding up, and that's when you start wondering, okay, is it really going to be worth it to fix this car? It's yet to be determined. This thing is kind of teetering on the teeter-totter, so to speak. So we went after the engine. We opened it up, and sure enough, it really looks good inside. The chain, that's one of the things you can always check. Just start pulling on the chain, see how much chain slack there is. This thing had absolutely no chain slack. I mean, it was really a tight chain. And then we checked the cam lobes. This is one thing I always look at on these old diesels that can give you a real indication of mileage or lack of maintenance, primarily lack of oil changes. But this cam had absolutely no evidence. I'm talking zero evidence of scoring. Even as I took and rubbed the fingernail across the top of the lobe, you're not feeling anything. So the cam checked out beautifully, but when we went to do the valve adjustment, all the intake valves were tight, almost at zero. We couldn't even get a 1 or 2 thousandths feeler gauge in it. So I'm beginning to wonder whether this thing has ever had a valve adjustment. We looked at the valve cover gasket and actually had the original Mercedes part number on the front of the valve cover gasket. So that's not to say the gasket's never been changed, but let me tell you, it looks like this engine has never been opened up, because that's kind of indicative of what happens when people don't do these valve adjustments on these diesel engines. The intake valves get real tight, and they'll get to the point where they'll actually hold the valve off the seat, and then you'll have low compression and hard starting, and that's why I always do a valve adjustment before we do a compression test. I finished repairing and cleaning the sunroof headliner panel out of my 76 240D here, and I'm ready to reinstall it. In last week's episode, I asked the question, what kind of cement should I use when gluing down these loose edges on these steel rails? So I'm going to show you the glue I use. Now, that's not to say that's the only glue in the world that you can use for this application, but it's the glue I prefer. And along with that, I'm going to introduce to you my product of the week. That is 303 Protectant and Wipes. These are really nice to use on the interior vinyl parts, rubber, plastic, and trim parts inside your car and on the outside edges. So I've put the protectant on the sunroof panel using these 303 wipes, and we're ready to reinstall it in the car. And we now have a good working, good looking sunroof in my old W211. The glue I use is a heavy duty, thick contact cement. And the emphasis is on thick, okay? If you use a thin contact cement, it's going to absorb too quickly into the vinyl and it won't stick. Thin works fine on metal, but it does not work very well on rubber and vinyl because of the absorption rate. So notice how thick this contact cement is. See, it isn't running. So you can find this in quality hardware stores. Some upholstery shops have this, but if you can't find it locally, we do carry this on my website. It's the same glue that we use for installing hood pads, and it works great. The interesting thing about contact cement is you have to let it dry to the point where it's no longer wet, but you can't let it dry too much. So to use this type of contact cement, it's all in how thick you put it on and how long you wait before you touch the two surfaces together. Now when I'm putting it on metal, there's no absorption rate. So I don't need to put it on real thick. I'm going to put on just a nice coverage coat like this. And I'll go all the way around and put this, what I would say is a thin to medium coat on the metal parts. After cleaning, I thoroughly rinse this panel and let it dry overnight. I wiped it down as best I could, but you still need to let it dry because you're going to have some water absorption into that vinyl. It looks a lot better, doesn't it? It's not perfect, but when I put this up inside my 240D, it's going to make the rest of the interior look like it needs cleaning, particularly the rest of the headliner. Now, before I put it back in the car, I go ahead and apply the protectant. Now, my protectant of choice for this vinyl is 303. It says right on there, 5-star protectant and cleaner. It's exceeding expectations since 1980. Well, I'm not the only one that thinks this is the best protectant out there. I do not like protectants like Armor All or some of the others that have silicone and petroleum products in them. This is a water-based product. It's pretty amazing stuff. So when you put it on and when it dries, it's going to seal the vinyl, protect it from UV deterioration, protect it from smudging and dirt. But it's not going to be sticky and shiny like so many of those other interior protectants are. And there are two types. We actually carry these on my website because, I'm so impressed with them, is you can spray it on with these little sprayers, but when I'm doing large panels like this one here in the interior, the door panels or headliner panels, I like to use these 303 wipes. And they're pretty amazing. You just take one wipe and it's pretty wet, and I'm just going to lift it up and really rub it in. And I'll keep rubbing it in until it actually develops a shine on the vinyl. That lets you know you're getting on real thick. You can see it's pretty clean. If it weren't clean, it would be picking up dirt on this wipe. I'm pushing pretty hard because I want to make sure I'm working this into the vinyl. Now, I don't use 303 on leather. It's just vinyl, rubber, and plastics. Okay, there you have it. I'm not going to wipe this down. I'm going to let that 303 just kind of absorb into the vinyl, and probably tomorrow I'll set this back inside the roof of my 240D, and I am finished. So that's the way you can clean up your sunroof headliner panel. I'm trying to find the source of a sticking throttle here on Happier. And I'm going to introduce you to my favorite tool of the week. It's this flashlight right here. I think some of you may have seen me using it, doing some inspection work on my 300 SD. But this is the most amazing flashlight I've ever come across. And look what it does. You have this head that can move like this. So I can actually set it here and aim it while I'm working. And then what's really nice about this slim design is you just turn it off and it slips in my shop coat pocket. And I've never had a flashlight in my shop coat pocket, and I've tried a lot of them. They tend to be too heavy, or the round design causes it to hit into things, but I walk around the shop with this flashlight in my pocket now all the time. When you turn it on, it has a number of functions. The first function is a flashlight coming out of one side. If you push the button the second time, then you get lights out of the back side. You push the button the third time, then it starts flashing as an emergency light. So this is great, having your car, if you have to stop on the side of the road and change a spare tire, this is what you want to have in your car. So what I'm doing now is putting these in all my cars, just to have a flashlight and an emergency light handy all the time. I am so impressed with this flashlight. It takes 3 AAA batteries, so there's no special batteries. And it seems to last just forever. But I'm so impressed with these, I'm going to start carrying them on my website. So don't be surprised in a week or so that you'll see these available at Mercedessource. Oh, by the way, there's one feature I missed. I missed the push of one button. You push it once, you have light coming out of this side. You push it the second time, you have light coming out of the back side. You push it the third time, and you have light coming out of both sides. So this makes a great camping light. You can just set this down inside your tent, and it kind of lights both sides. And what I really like about this switching device is if the light's been on for a while, when you hit it again, it just goes off. So you've probably had a few of these lights before that have 3 functions, and you have to go through all 3 functions to get it to turn off. Well, not the case with this one. Push it once, push it twice, see, it'll go right to the next function if you don't delay, and then the third time it becomes the camping light, and then the 4th button, push, it becomes the emergency flasher. So, and then push it again, it's off, fold it up, put it in your pocket, put it in the side map pocket of your car, and you have the best flashlight around. This past week I had a surprise visit from a fellow Mercedes enthusiast. Guess what? Somebody drove in here in another Pagoda, a W113, kind of a brother to Happier here. And it was a great looking SL, you know, it had a beautiful burgundy paint job and black interior. I just love that color combination on the W113, but he was having a problem, and the problem was a sticking brake caliper. This is really common on these old cars, particularly when they don't get driven a lot, but he said his right rear wheel almost caught on fire. The grease almost ignited because the wheel got so hot he had smoke rolling out of the rear of his car. So that can be a very dangerous situation. Now, when he drove it over here, I asked him how far away he was. He says, well, I'm not very far. So he drove it over kind of milking the emergency brake so he wouldn't lock up that rear caliper. So, you know, I got looking the car over, and I told him, you know, it's probably not going to be real inexpensive to have to redo the brakes on this. Because when you get into these cars like this, you can't just fix one caliper. Usually what happens is all the parts are old. You know, the flexible brake hoses are all corroded inside and plugged up, and the master cylinder seals are weak at best. So if you start messing around with that, you could lose the seal in those. So you start looking at calipers, master cylinder, and all those flexible brake hoses, the price can run up. But if you want to get it fixed properly, and I explained I don't really do work for customers anymore, but I thought this might be a good opportunity for me to get another W113 in the shop here, get up on lift and go around and show you some tips on how you test brake systems on these old cars and what to look for. So we're waiting to hear back from him, but he drove away. He's happy. He really loves that car. And I asked him, I said, do you ever think you'll ever want to sell? He said, no. No, this is a keeper. So off he went. And if we get some sort of an arrangement to work on his car, you'll be able to see us repairing those brakes in a future episode of Kent's Garage. So the contest of the week is to guess what in the world is in this big box that we just brought into our shop today. What is in this box anyway that would warrant this amount of work to get it into the shop and up on the car lift, and it just barely clears the ceiling? Okay, let's see what's in this box. Oh, it's like Christmas in January. Oh, what could it be? Can I see in there? Kind of dark. Man, what is it? It looks creepy. Is this going to give us any better view of what's in there? Man. What is behind that plastic anyway? Anyone want to wager or guess? This is round 2 of the contest of the week. So that wraps it up for this week's episode of My Garage. I've got a few other projects I'll be working on this coming week, and you'll get to see an update on those on the next series when I'm able to film that. But tomorrow I'm going to have to take the door panel off my E500 here because the power seat memory switch is not functioning properly. If any of you have had one of these power seats and had it stick in a position, like maybe your wife's driven it and brought it back and you go to get in and the seat doesn't move back. I actually had to drive it out here to the shop with it in the forward position where my wife puts it, and I'm driving down the road and can hardly get in the car. So I don't neglect these power seat problems when they crop up. And you know, this is kind of something that happens just due to age. You know, this is a 12-year-old car, and so that's going to be fun. Not a difficult job. You know, there's a lot of information on the internet about doing this, getting the door panel off. But we'll report back next week and let you know how the E500 is doing. We'll let you know about some of these other projects we're working around on the shop here. So I just want to mention, if you enjoy these episodes of Kent's Garage, I am going to need some support to keep them going. They are not inexpensive to film, by the way. One of the ways you can support these episodes is to donate to my fan funding account. That's on the home page of my YouTube channel. There's a little link that says support. The other thing is you can purchase products from my website. Almost all the products I show on these Kent's Garage series are available on my website. And these are specialty kits, tools, and products that can help you repair your own Mercedes and save a lot of money.